think it's long past time I wrapped up that old top 20 list, so this episode's going to be split into two parts. First we have the SpongeBob TV movie that I originally put as number 1, Atlantis Squarepantis. The gist was that SpongeBob and the gang find a treasure that leads them to the lost city of Atlantis. It certainly sounded interesting, but proved to be a really weak episode. For a special that's supposed to take place in a wondrous city lost to the ages, it offers very little to look at. The sets in the beginning look fine. Jellyfish Fields is the same as it ever was, and the Bikini Bottom Museum looks like an ordinary art museum. It's when we get to Atlantis that the visuals become sparse. Most of what we see of Atlantis is generic sci-fi fantasy scenery that has almost nothing in it, save for a few specific rooms that have more detailing. And, except for a few scenes, the only Atlantean we see is the ruler, Lord Royal Highness. Most of the city is deserted. With so few background characters to populate the city, and so many empty, colorless rooms, it feels utterly lifeless. The few rooms that have stuff in them are barely seen. Out of curiosity, I looked up a behind-the-scenes featurette for the movie, which showed concept art of Atlantis with a more traditional Roman look. It would have been interesting if they blended this look with a futuristic vibe. There are other design choices I found to be unnecessary or confusing. For instance, the interior of the van that takes our heroes to Atlantis is in 3D. I've mentioned before how integrating 3D models into 2D animations can work so long as they blend together. Typically that means the models are textured and rendered in a way that matches the overall art style. Here, that isn't the case, making this interior pretty jarring when we see it for the first time. Plus, the compositing is so minimal that the characters and the background don't blend at all. Meanwhile, the look of the Atlanteans was based off the blue meanies from Yellow Submarine. I find this a weird choice given how uncharacteristically infantile this special is. While the show is always skewed towards a younger audience, what made the pre-film era so effective was that the writing and animation were smart enough to give it a broader appeal. There are episodes I can watch as an adult and still find genuinely funny, rather than just nostalgic. But this special is the opposite of that. It's handled in a way that makes it feel like it would air on Nick Jr.
Sing? Sing a song? A song of wanting to move along!
Putting in references only adults would probably get doesn't work well if the overall movie doesn't appeal to them at all. Before I talk about the other characters, I'd like to address the Atlantean ruler. Honestly, I can't get over how they named him Lord Royal Highness. I refrain from assuming things were done out of laziness, but really, they couldn't come up with a real name? When you take away his bizarre appearance, there isn't much to his character. He's just a typical, well-mannered royal.
So sorry I'm late. The tour ran a little long.
As some of you likely remember, this character was voiced by the late David Bowie. That's the big plus I can give LRH. Bowie didn't sleepwalk through this performance by any means.
We haven't had visitors in quite some time. You see, being a lost city has certain disadvantages, but I digress.
Unlike other post-film episodes, our heroes remain in character for the most part. No one is excessively idiotic, mean, or otherwise. However, for reasons I'll get to shortly, I feel this story would have benefited from a smaller cast, like if they cut Mr. Krabs and Sandy to focus on SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward. When SpongeBob and Patrick take the amulet piece to the museum, Squidward's presence there feels organic since he's an art lover. On the other hand, Mr. Krabs just happens to be there to scam old people, not exactly in character for him, and Sandy suddenly appears mid-scene with no introduction. It makes them feel shoehorned in. Considering how little they impact the story going forward, they could have easily been dropped. It would have eliminated the need to address every one of their particular interests and left room for other events to happen. Speaking of minimal impact, there's a subplot involving longtime SpongeBob villain Plankton, who wants to use the Atlantean armory to conquer the city. If you thought Sandy's intro was abrupt, Plankton's is just plain slapdash.
I want to be your friend.
Such a valiant desire.
I'm not kidding. He first pops up on this magical van in the middle of a song. Not even a hint as to how he got there. Aside from that, he barely even shows up in this movie. The only time he interacts with anyone is at the very end, making his subplot feel completely disconnected from the rest of the story. While this movie's story is straightforward, it feels as empty as much of the scenery. It starts off okay with our heroes discovering a legendary treasure said to open the way to Atlantis.
It's the key to untold riches.
Someone say untold riches?
Yes, Eugene.
But after that point, it becomes a boring loop of singing, walking around, singing, and walking around that takes up a huge chunk of the runtime. Rather than moving the story forward, most of the songs grind to a halt instead. Why? Excluding the first song and Sandy's song, each one is of our characters hammering into our heads that they have a favorite thing. Mr. Krabs loves money, Squidward loves art, etc. There are interesting ideas among these songs, like a machine that shrinks you down to fight germs mano-y-mano, and an art gallery with enterable paintings. Each plays with different art styles, which I feel worked better with Squidward's song. Sandy's song, by contrast, uses low-resolution graphics reminiscent of early arcade games. These graphics look fine from a distance, but up close they look muddy, making the animation difficult to read at times. Furthermore, nothing else comes out of either of these ideas. After their brief songs, they're never reincorporated, making them feel like gimmicky filler. And filler was not something this movie could afford. When you take out all the credit rolls and Patchy the Pirate scenes, this special only runs for 32 minutes. With a runtime that tight, consolidation is key. Don't try to shove in every idea you have. Pick the ones that are most important and build on them. By the time we get to the important conflict of the story, SpongeBob and Patrick accidentally popping the world's oldest living bubble, there's only 8 minutes left. Nowhere near enough time for a solid climax and resolution. As a result, we end up with another issue that was common among post-film episodes. The main conflict resolves itself. Patrick destroys the most important relic in Atlantean culture, they try to run away, Plankton blasts them with ice cream, then everything's okay.
Oh, look! A talking speck. Amazing! This is so much better than that dusty old bubble.
It makes sense if Plankton truly posed a threat to Atlantis and our heroes stopped him, giving the Atlanteans a reason to forgive them. Without any real struggle or believable motivations, this ending is anticlimactic and obnoxiously convenient. Lastly, much of the humor in this movie is typical cartoon fare, like LRH tripping down a flight of stairs and him overtly stating how leaving the numbskulls alone with the bubble is a bad idea.
So I'm just going to leave you two friendly strangers alone with our most beloved, ancient and fragile Atlantean relic.
In other cases, the jokes simply lack humor.
You dimwits haven't even been here 2 minutes and you've already messed up someone's topiary garden. That's just a painting, you quarter-wit. Quarter-wit. Ha! It's less than half.
That last one could have worked if he didn't explain it. There are at least a couple jokes that work, however, like this one.
SpongeBob?
Not now, Patrick. This bubble is gonna break all records.
Well, I hope it doesn't break until we get a little closer to the ground.
There was even a humorous nod to the pre-film era towards the end. Squidward holds up a painting of himself with a horn of plenty full of canned bread. And this might be a stretch, but I think that bump on his nose is a reference to Artist Unknown.
There! Now it's art!
While I wouldn't rank it as number 1 now, this remains one of my least favorite episodes of the show. Promising concepts were lost on bland visuals, gimmicky and repetitive song numbers, and an uninteresting plot. Next week, we're looking at the one episode from the original list I didn't get to go in depth with, The Clash of Triton. Oh boy. Hey everybody, one more thing before you go. Right now on my Patreon page, a poll is being held for the first Fan's Choice review. Anyone who pledges $1 a month can partake in this and all future polls. The choices for this poll are Pixar's Monsters Incorporated, a bizarre Charlotte's Web knockoff from Sparkplug Entertainment, and Turner Feature Animation's big band musical, Cats Don't Dance. Hurry though, this poll closes on August 31st. Thanks for watching!